the domestic markets have been neglected. Exports will only happen if we let our domestic markets and local entrepreneurs work efficiently and freely. There is a retail outlet. It will take you 11 months and upwards of 100,000 rupees.
Pakistan has historically had a very weak export performance. Our exports are concentrated in low value added products, primarily textiles and apparel. We have not yet started on the process of structural transformation to move from low value added to high value added products. It's beneficial to go for a tariff reduction. Exports will increase.
12% of the stock market companies' ownership is with government of Pakistan.
The chain stores are actually mainly they are family run businesses. कोई भी हमारा chain store जो है वो अपने brand development उस पे focus नहीं कर रहा है. FBR is the main problem. हमें taxes जो हैं वो बहुत ज़्यादा कर रहे हैं. Chain stores हैं उनकी on average number of branches जो हैं वो 28 हैं. इसके मुकाबले में अगर आप इंडिया का देखें उनके जो चेन स्टोर्स हैं उनकी एवरेज नंबर ऑफ ब्रांचेस जो हैं वो 298 हैं. हमारी जो पॉलिसीज हैं इट इज़ मोर फेवरेबल फॉर इंटरनेशनल ब्रांड्स.
Launched today the State of Commerce in Pakistan, international and domestic. This is the first volume of a series of reports on domestic commerce in Pakistan. Others are in the pipeline. I welcome Dr. Jahanzeb Khan. Thank you very much, sir, for gracing the occasion, and also Special Secretary, Ministry of Commerce, Ms. Sarah Said. Thank you very much, madam, for joining us here. Let's begin the proceedings with the tilawat of Holy Quran. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta ilayhim. غير المغضوب إليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. Dr. Nadeem conceptualizes report from the Adam Smith's point of view that economy is full of is sum of all transactions, and transactions and markets are very intimately related because it is the markets where quick processing of information and contracts are carried out efficiently. But as long as the markets are not efficient and supportive of all the other economic activities, transactions slow down, and that also hampers the growth of the economy, because whenever there are maximum possible number of transactions and with quick speed happens, only then the economy will be able to grow. So, as Dr. Nadeem said, that we are still stuck in the model of 1960s. That was a term coined by Dr. Nadeem Haq, hack model, which was based on the Dr. Mahbub Haq's famous book of the 1960s and our advisory group. He has told us what it is about. So, but the bottom line is that because of that approach, the domestic markets have been neglected, and it is evident from the fact that the first ever domestic commerce policy was proposed in 2021, which is a good step, and there was again an update of that policy in 2023. So, Dr. Nadeem has done a lot of research. He has written a series of papers. So, what we need is a move from that mercantilist approach of the 17th and 18th century to domestic market development. Why? Because it is the domestic markets where entrepreneurship, innovations, and brand development happen. Why does it happen in domestic markets? Because they are given a chance, entrepreneurs are given a chance to perfect their products. For example, we have a very own example of Khadi that has developed as a global brand. It is popular in Dubai, UK, USA, even in India. Before moving into the international market, they perfected their brand and they created brand equity in the domestic market, but if you look at the international trends, Coke, McDonald's, Amazon started as a small shop where Jeff Bezos sold merchandise in the back of the truck. In his garage, Nike was operated initially in a truck. So there are many more examples. So that's why we need a paradigm shift needed. No one is saying that exports are not necessary. Exports are necessary, but exports will only happen if we let our domestic markets and local entrepreneurs work efficiently and freely. Then we will be able to export more value-added products. So if you look at the report, the sequence is a bit different. In the report, we have first talked about international trade, but we decided that we should first talk about domestic commerce. Why? Because of all the preamble we have given that domestic commerce is the basis and domestic market are the basis of economic growth in any economy. If you look at India's services sector has grown. World Bank has written papers on India's services sector. They have grown on the back of growth in the services sectors. So why domestic commerce is important? As we can see that it is the largest employer of labor force in Pakistan and second largest at 32.06%. And within domestic commerce, the wholesale and retail sector is the largest employer at 14.37%. That is why we are mainly going to focus in this section on wholesale and retail. We are also going to talk about other things. Similarly, if we look at the output of domestic commerce, it is 52%. Roughly, if we include construction as well, which is although characterized as an industry in economic survey, but a large part of it is also services. So then domestic commerce share increases in total GDP. Again, share of wholesale and retail trade is the highest, as almost 19%. So this is a snapshot of the wholesale and retail trade in Pakistan and Islamabad as well. The first economic census of economic establishment was carried out in 2002, and the results were published in 2005. Since then, no such survey or information is available. Many people have tried to come up with guesstimates. For example, the BBC and CDPR, they use the commercial electricity connections to estimate the number of wholesale and retail establishments in Pakistan. For information, this report is also being carried out in Quetta, Peshawar, Lahore, Karachi and Faisalabad. So people are working there. They have come up with preliminary numbers. So using those numbers, we have estimated that there are around about 2.66 million wholesale and retail establishments in Pakistan. I'm pretty sure these are on a lower side, but still, if we look at from 1988 and 2002, it is a substantial increase. It's almost 4% per annum growth. So, what is wholesale and retail? In formality, there are more than 90% of the wholesale and retail establishment are in the informal sectors. There are various reasons for that. We are going to talk about in this section and in other section as well. The main reason is that there is a regulatory burden. Even the organized sector is subjected to 11 agencies, and they have to comply with their requirements to operate in the organized sector. That is the reason that most of the informal sector people who even want to graduate to the formal sector do not do so because of the fear of EOBI, Labor Department, SESI, FBR, signboard authority, and all these things. So, and it is, another feature is that it is a small scale sector. 91% of the establishments that we surveyed were single outlet grocery stores and kirana stores, which are also known as mom and pop stores, and they operate on sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship has also its advantages, but a lot of disadvantages as well. When we talked about the problems that they faced, we said that the rents are the most, 50% of the people, establishments said that rents are high. Okay, good, fine, 50% said that rents are not high, but still 50% is a sizable number. And when we probed in focus group discussions and informal interviews, many people cited the 2016 ruling of the Supreme Court, which forced the commercial establishments from residential areas. These are rules, yes, but that again calls for changing our zoning regulation, our urban policy. When we go ahead, when we move further and go on to the construction and real estate section, we will see that even in new housing societies, very little area is devoted to commercial plots and buildings, and that too is confined to a limited number of stories. Another factor was that they cited was a problem from them was lack of any financial instruments specifically tailored to the needs of wholesale and retail sector. And so regulatory burden, we have done a series of reports on regulatory burden. For example, Vakar is sitting here with me. He has done now very famous PIDE sludge audit, and in that he found out that if you are going to open retail outlet, it will take you 11 months and upwards of 100,000 rupees, and that was for 2 years back. So I'm sure the price has escalated, and also there are more problems than we talk to them. Most of the people said that their main regulator is FBR. So it shows that how concerned they are with the with taxation. They did not know that even they need to take permission from CDA or Rawalpindi Municipal Authority. We all know that Labor Department is also a big problem, because if you have more than a certain number of employees in your establishment, you have to register with the Labor Department, so they underreport their labor. So, and EOBI is also problem, because they have to comply with their requirements. So in some, regulatory burden is huge, and also most of the people don't even know that what regulations are related to the wholesale and retail sector. So yeah, we talked about that. We say, World Bank says, many other organizations say that we need to formalize, but we don't need to formalize at the expense of the dynamism of the sector, because as I showed that it employs a huge number of labor force, it contributes significantly to the output, and if you look at Latin American companies like Peru, Brazil, even in India, what they have done is, because they are also informal retail sector is huge, they have conceived different, for example, taxation policies for the informal sectors, which makes them easier to file their returns. And once they become well versed with the requirements, then they are able to graduate. So we don't need to, meddle with their informality. Like today they are informal, and we want them to be formal tomorrow. Moving on to finance, one very interesting fact that we found out that there are many of the retailers and wholesalers in Islam and Rawalpindi and in Pakistan as well use informal finance, which is famous commonly known as the committee system. It is RASCA, Revolving Saving and Credit Organization. And I was surprised to know that in Rawalpindi and Islamabad, in big markets, the pot size goes up to 20 million rupees, which is a significant sum. But because there's a lack of financial instruments, banks do not care about them. This savings can be channelized to the formal sector if they are given easy terms to finance their investments in wholesale. And then we also talk to them that why don't you grow beyond a certain size? Why don't you become a chain store brand like many have done? So it is the buck stops also with them that they, until recently, until COVID happened, there were no, even the organized sector used ordinary Excel sheet for inventory management. They did not use sophisticated software. World over, even new organizations use demand forecasting and these methods to gauge how much will be the demand and what would be the future trends. So that is the reason that there is a lack of growth. We will see that even formal sector chain stores are mostly based on sole proprietorship and family owned. So now we are going to talk about the international trade first, and I'll ask Usman Kader to present this section.
Thank you, Moni, for the introduction. I'd like to begin by setting the stage for you with regard to the external sector, which is basically the highest standard being followed in import substitution policy, since the 1980s. This policy has developed a diversified economic competitiveness and productivity and causing an anti-export bias rather than resulting in a growth of the economy as such. Tariffs are used by the FBR for revenue enhancement purposes, quick revenue generation, and domestic producers are able to use the space afforded by import substitution policy to not compete, and they are able to use the space to increase prices for their products, and consumers have little option but to buy those products from them. When you look at the tariff structure, measure of how the tariff structure is affecting the value-added production in the country per unit of output is given by the effective production rates, which you can see are very high. In 2011, they were 99.8% for the manufacturing sector. They've come down by 2020 to 39.7%, but they're still very high. And this affects our competitiveness and growth. Now, when you look at the effective production, for example, in the automobile industry, you see that motor vehicles end up having overall production of 45.4%. 32.9% is due to import tariffs, which are imposed on the product. And then you have 12.5%, which is a PIDE estimate of the own money impact. Own money is a black market premium consumers have to pay for purchase of their vehicles. And our research shows that consumers end up paying on average 30 to 34 billion rupees per year for this. And this is because of the stunted market for automobiles that import substitution has afforded them. We've run some estimations and simulations to see what the effect of a reduction in tariffs would be. It will be a game changer for us in the long run. By 2032, our trade balance should be reversed and become positive. In the short run, of course, there will be some adjustment and the trade balance will become worse for a while till we pick up. Investment in GDP in the long run will also increase. What we did was in phase one, we showed that reducing the import tariffs on the most protected industries to a tariff rate of average of 12% in the first 2 years would cause an increase in investment in GDP In phase 2, uniformly reducing tariffs on all industries till we are at 5% on average for all industries would cause a substantial benefit for the economy. When we eliminate tariffs on overall on trade, we see that exports will increase, imports will come down. Now, what has been happening on the international trade front? Basically, what products are we exporting? What is the world wanting from us? Pakistan has historically had a very weak export performance, historically and comparatively. Historically, our exports have wavered and never been sustainable. And when you look at them comparatively, as shown in the right side graph, our comparators are surging ahead while we are lagging far, far behind. At the export basket for 2021, our exports are concentrated in low value added products, primarily textiles and apparel. They take up the bulk of the share, followed by cereals, which is again an agricultural based product. Value added products are very low in the basket. Now, in 2020, we looked at the proportion of new products that were added to our basket. Primarily, it was refined copper and copper alloys, beef, etc. But these resulted in an on average increase in per capita income for us of US $4, which is not substantial. And while it's a commendable diversification, it's a good start, but it's not a great start. Our export basket, destination wise, you can see the regional countries have a very low share. Primarily, our exports are going to the US and UAE, and this has not changed much over the years. We have a cascading tariff structure in our policy framework. Highest import duty for cascading. Egypt is the topmost, and Pakistan is the second highest. A cascading tariff structure worsens the anti-export bias in our policy. It's because you have tariffs on raw materials and intermediates, and the tariff on the final good also. So businesses end up paying double and paying more tariff for the product. Now, when we look at our complexity of our exports and products, we are ranking far, far behind our comparators. China is surging ahead. Vietnam, India are also ahead. Bangladesh is catching up with us, and by all counts, it will probably overtake us soon. Our knowledge base, our productive knowledge ranking is low. And we have a low number of products that we are exporting anyway. As you can see here, this is our product space, which is concentrated in textile and agriculture product. On the right side, the green dots. So we have not yet started on the process of structural transformation to move from low value added to high value added products. We are still stuck in the low value added range. PIDE research shows that exports increases across the board with tariff reduction, with the greatest benefits being to value added product groups. So there is research which shows that it's beneficial to go for a tariff reduction. Exports will increase. And this is consistent with the finding of other institutions and researchers as well.
First of all, we have used the market capitalization to GDP ratio, which is basically the one movement ratio, which is also called the golden ratio, which shows that the market is undervalued or overvalued. Generally, if it is more than 50%, then it is large, it is overvalued. But in Pakistan case, it is 10%. There are very less companies which are listed over there. If you talk about India, they have 100% of market capitalization, and in USA we have 200% of market capitalization. So from here, this is the measure of basically the stocks to the value of stocks to the aggregate level of the output. So in Pakistan, it is comparatively very low. After that, because the main reason is that companies are not, more companies are registered on the Pakistani stock markets. There is no trend that financing is raised from the stock markets But basically, it is an indication when IPOs are happen in any country that it is the inclusion of individual investors towards the businesses of the Pakistan. The recent study of Haq of 33 families, from where we can observe that the specific families are again capture the stock market of the Pakistan as the informal economy. So there are the second problem with the company which are going for IPO is that there is more regulation for the companies which are being raised capital from the financial markets. But in comparison to Pakistan from South Asian point of view, the India, if you look at the India and Bangladesh numbers, they are quite ahead in comparison to the Pakistan. Then from the GDP, we have calculated the market capitalization. So the market capitalization shows the size and depth of the market. In reference to the Pakistan, the market capitalization of the Pakistani stock market is currently that is between $23 billion to $25 billion. Even in India, that is one company which is Tata Motors, which is 28 billion of the size. After that, we have saw that what are the market participants. This is the figure from the Hux paper of 2020, that 12% of the stock market companies ownership is with government of Pakistan. Pakistan Tobacco Company, which has the second highest market capitalization in the market. So there are certain families which are capturing the major portion of the KSE 100 index, and they lead the market. After that, we have taken blue chips. The numbers are very surprising that even the listed companies, the stock market has very low free float. The available shares for the general public for trading, even we have Standard Chartered, this is less than 5% of the share which are free float in the market. Then even PAKT, very less number of the company which have the share more than 50%, because blue chips are called, they are leading the market, but we can see from these blue chips that they are not even most of the companies are less than 25% of the shares which are available for the individuals. So this is the major reason for the Pakistani stock market, that the mergers and acquisitions are not happen over there as they are in the US and other markets. The market is basically captured by the government of Pakistan and specific families. These are Mehboob 22 families, and now our recent PIDE study of HUC 2020, that is now there are 33 families. And after that, whenever we go for any market, we see that okay, whenever they are going for financing, if they are not going for the financing from the financial markets, whether they are going for the financing from the debt or banking sector, so it is again very surprising that the capital intensive industries like automobile, cement sector, oil and gas, they have a negligible debt on the their balance sheet, because it is called the debt is served as the alternative or as a defender to the agency problem. When you are using the debt, then automatically it will defend that the interest will be due after every year, but not the dividends you have to pay. So this number is again, the companies are not using debt because for international markets, the Morgan and Miller says that debt is the cheaper source of financing in comparison to equity, but companies are not relying on that for the Pakistani stock market. Then the myth that the real estate market is earning heavily in Pakistan, but when we see at the year-on-year change, the KSE 100 index has more returns from year 2012 to 2018. Basically, the phenomena of present value of future expected cash flows, that is based on interest rates. When interest rates are higher, the value of the shares are decreasing. So we can see the trend after 2018 that KSE gives the less return in comparison to the real estate market. But again, after 2020, the relationship will be reversed again. Then we have compared the stock market returns with the other markets like gold and silver market, the metals. So again, the interesting figure is that KSE again gives a higher returns in comparison to the metals like gold or silver. Then we have compared this risky security, that is stock market, and then risk-free security, that is government securities. So trends are same till 2018. We can see that KSE have the higher return in comparison to the other government securities, but with the increase of the interest rates after 2018, the government securities have the more return in comparison to the KSE. Then we go for the in-depth analysis for the banking sector. Basically, the banking sector is capturing the stock market, which has the highest market capitalization, 992.12 million. This is the figure of June 2023. And then banks are basically focusing to lend the corporate financing except SMEs or agriculture sector. The infection ratios, which are basically telling about the net provisions for the losses in the market, for this particular point of view, the results are again that the private sector banks have very low non-performing loans in comparison to public sector. Even the Sindh Bank has 50% of non-performing loans in the recent time. And the infection ratios of Islamic banks are very low, but the public sector banks have high non-performing loans, which are higher in the region, even non-performing loans in the South Asian region. This is the behavior of overall non-performing loans of Pakistani market, which is around 8%. In dual market, it is less than 5%. Even in India, it is less in comparison to the Pakistan. So this is all about the stock market. Now, Waqar, please.
Thank you, Dr. Fras. No, I would like your attention and take you back to from where we started with domestic commerce. डोमेस्टिक कॉमर्स में फिर हमने थोड़ा सा डिटेल स्टडी करना शुरू किया कि इसको भी देखें कि ये कॉमर्स जो है इसकी नेचर क्या है. उसमें जो पहला टॉपिक आपके साथ मैं अभी डिस्कस करना चाहूँगा, इट्स चेन स्टोर. सो चेन स्टोर इज एक्चुअली इन बिटवीन अ वेरी बेसिक स्मॉल रिटेल, जिसे मॉम एंड पॉप जैसे उन्होंने आपको बताया, स्टोर्स एंड सुपर मार्केट, इट इज़ इन बिटवीन दोज. तो अगर हम चेन स्टोर के देखें इन पाकिस्तान, देन अगर कंपोजिशन वाइज हम देखें, देर आर अराउंड अबाउट 134 टोटल चेन स्टोर ब्रांड्स, एंड उनमें से भी सबसे ज़्यादा जो है वो क्लॉथिंग एंड एपरल से रिलेटेड है. 73 जो हैं वो क्लॉथिंग एंड एपरल से रिलेटेड हैं. सेकेंड कम्स द फुटवेयर, and supermarkets and departmental stores are also increasing in numbers. And the most important thing that we noticed is that chain store is a recent phenomena in Pakistan in our commerce, और वो ये इमर्ज हो रही हैं ओवर द टाइम. फॉर एग्जांपल अभी आपने देखा होगा इस्लामाबाद में भी डिफरेंट इम्तियाज़ भी आ गया है, अल-फतेह ओपन हो रहा है एंड अदर थिंग्स. सो चेन स्टोर जो है वो ग्रो कर रही हैं पाकिस्तान में, बट स्टिल अभी भी ये अभी इनिशियल स्टेजेस पे हैं. अभी डोमेस्टिक मार्केट को ही सर्व कर रहे हैं. इंटरनेशनल प्रेजेंस इनकी ऑलमोस्ट ज़ीरो है. और जो फुटवेयर है उसमें सबसे ज़्यादा हमारे पास जो हैं वो वी नो डिफरेंट सर्विसेज, बाटा एंड एंड्योर वगैरह ये एग्जिस्ट कर रही हैं. सो दिस इज़ अ फर्दर बाइफर्केशन इन द चेन स्टोर्स कि हमारे पास कौन सी ब्रांड्स जो हैं वो एग्जिस्ट कर रहे हैं. नो, व्हेन वी लुक्ड एट द टाइप ऑफ ऑनरशिप, what we found that the chain stores are actually mainly they are family run businesses, और वो सोल प्रोप्राइटरशिप है. और इस सोल प्रोप्राइटरशिप के एक जो इम्पैक्ट आ रहा है वो ये है कि देयर इज़ नो ब्रांडिंग. कोई भी हमारा चेन स्टोर जो है वो अपने ब्रांड डेवलपमेंट उस पर फोकस नहीं कर रहा है. एंड नन ऑफ आवर चेन स्टोर इज लिस्टेड इन द स्टॉक एक्सचेंज. एंड व्हेन वी लुक एट दिस साइज एम्प्लॉयमेंट वाइज, देन वी फाउंड दैट देयर आर ऑन एवरेज there are more than 250 employees per store, and maximum is 2500. And we also asked them what is hurting their growth, कि क्या वजह है कि वो ग्रो क्यों नहीं कर रहे हैं, अपनी ब्रांड क्यों नहीं डेवलप कर रहे, आउटसाइड जो पाकिस्तान के बाद इंटरनेशनल मार्केट में नहीं जा रहे हैं. The first main problem or concern they show is about taxes. The FBR is the main problem. हमें taxes जो हैं वो बहुत ज़्यादा कर रहे हैं. Then definitely we are living in inflationary environment right now. Inflation comes up second. And commercial spaces जैसा कि अभी मैंने rents में भी आपको बताया. Commercial space is also serious issue for chain stores because चेन स्टोर्स मोस्टली ऑपरेट्स उनके जो साइनेज होता है वो या आउटलेट होता है वो उसको सेम रखना चाह रहे हैं, तो वो उसके लिए उनको उस तरह की कमर्शियल स्पेसिस अवेलेबल नहीं होती हैं. फिर हमने देखा कि हमारे नेबरहुड में क्या हो रहा है कि हमारे यहाँ जो ऑन एवरेज चेन स्टोर्स हैं उनकी ऑन एवरेज नंबर ऑफ ब्रांचेस जो हैं वो 28 हैं. इसके मुकाबले में अगर आप इंडिया का देखें उनके जो चेन स्टोर्स हैं उनकी एवरेज नंबर ऑफ ब्रांचेस जो हैं वो 298 हैं. अगर हम पॉपुलेशन के साथ इसको एडजस्ट भी कर लें देन आइडियली 50 होनी चाहिए पाकिस्तान के केस में. सो इससे ये हमें पता चल रहा है कि हमारा जो चेन स्टोर है ये अभी फैंसी स्टेज में, अभी अर्ली स्टेजेस में डेवलपमेंट इसमें होने की ज़रूरत है. इसमें एक बहुत बड़ा मसला जो हमें चेन स्टोर से पता चला वो ये है कि हमारी जो पॉलिसीज़ हैं इट इज़ मोर फेवरेबल फॉर इंटरनेशनल ब्रांड्स. फॉर एग्जांपल हमने कारफोर को यहाँ पे सब्सिडाइज रेट्स पे ज़मीन दे दी, उनको टैक्स हॉलीडेज दे दी है, बट हमारे जो लोकल चेन स्टोर्स हैं उनके लिए हमने कोई इस तरह का इंसेंटिव मैकेनिज्म नहीं रखा हुआ है. तो ये जो लेवल प्लेइंग फील्ड है ये अवेलेबल ना होने की वजह से जो हमारे चेन स्टोर्स हैं वो उस तरह से ग्रो नहीं हो पा रहे. एक वजह उसमें से ये भी आई. देन वी आल्सो लुक्ड एट फ्रेंचाइजिंग बिजनेस इन पाकिस्तान. तो फ्रेंचाइजिंग में हमें पता चला कि देयर आर 150 प्लस ब्रांड्स इन पाकिस्तान. आउट ऑफ दिस 150 27% जो है वो इंटरनेशनल ब्रांड्स हैं और 73% जो है वो आपके पास नेशनल ब्रांड्स हैं. और ये जो फ्रेंचाइजीज हैं इनका एनुअल रेवेन्यू जो है वो राउंड अबाउट $4 बिलियन है और उसमें से रॉयल्टी जो है वो $1 बिलियन जो है वो रॉयल्टी जा रही है इनमें से. Why we have so much presence of franchising in Pakistan? One reason is that कि हमारे पास ease of doing business in franchising इसमें हमारी रैंकिंग बहुत लो है. We rank 108. अगर हम सेक्टर वाइज और इंडस्ट्री वाइज देखेंगे हमारे पास फ्रेंचाइजिंग ब्रांड्स कहाँ पे हैं नेशनल एंड इंटरनेशनल कैटेगरी वाइज. तो क्लॉथिंग एंड शूज कम अप द टॉप मोस्ट इंडस्ट्री जहाँ पे आपके पास फ्रेंचाइजिंग एग्जिस्ट कर रही है. और क्लॉथिंग में अगेन नेशनल जो है वो आपके पास 43 हैं और इंटरनेशनल जो है वो 18 ब्रांड्स जो हैं वो एग्जिस्ट कर रही हैं. Then we also looked at total franchise industry wise. तो अगेन वही आपके पास फिगर्स आ रही हैं कि क्लॉथिंग एंड स्टेज जो शूज़ हैं उसमें 1500 से ज़्यादा जो है वो फ्रेंचाइजीज एग्जिस्ट कर रही हैं. देन वी आल्सो टॉक अबाउट अगेन मेजर कंस्ट्रेंट्स क्या हैं उनके पास. द टॉप 3 कंस्ट्रेंट्स आर फ्रेंचाइजी फीस विच इज रफली $1 बिलियन फ्रेंचाइजी फीस है. दूसरा बिजनेस इस्टेब्लिशमेंट इन्वेस्टमेंट और जो इनिशियल इन्वेस्टमेंट है वो बहुत ज़्यादा हाई है उसके पास. एंड थर्ड वन इज रॉयल्टी. देन फ्रेंचाइजीज फीस हियर इज अ कंपैरिजन अबाउट फॉर डिफरेंट फ्रेंचाइजीज. टॉप मोस्ट इज सुपीरियर कॉलेजेस विच इज $4 million चार्ज $4 million give you a franchise or and so on. Here is the franchise fees for international brands. इसमें आपके पास जो टॉप पे आ रहा है वो मैरियट इंटरनेशनल है विच चार्ज $4 million रुपीस. और लियो कॉन्सेप्ट जो है वो इट चार्ज $10 million. And if you look at the sector-wise maximum royalty paid per month as a percentage of revenue, then export manufacturing comes up top, while the financial sector is the least expensive sector in that regard. There is a lot more information because of the constraint of time. I am just skipping and giving some snapshots what we have done. The next is we also looked at the business conglomerates. कि ये बिजनेस कंग्लोमरेट्स जो हैं हमारे पास वो क्या कर रहे हैं, बिकॉज वी बिलीव इट इज़ द बिजनेस कंग्लोमरेट्स हु एड वैल्यू, हु ब्रिंग्स ब्रांड्स एंड इनोवेशंस इन द बिजनेसेस। लेकिन हमारे यहाँ जो है वो पाया ये हो रहा है या नहीं। इफ़ वी लुक एट देयर आर 42 मेजर बिजनेस conglomerates operates in the Pakistan, and they own 421 companies in Pakistan. The top most business conglomerate is Nishat Group, जिनके पास 34 different companies जो हैं वो उनके पास ऑपरेट कर रही हैं। And we also looked at the net worth of these 42 business conglomerates. Its net worth is 48.2 billion US dollar, and it is peanuts against if you compare it with our neighbor country. For example, in India, Tata worth more than 300 billion dollars. So that's also put a big question mark on our business conglomerates. So if you look at the nature of their businesses, 76% are listed while 24% are unlisted. And then we also looked at their operation. They are operating in the national market or international market, and what we found that 84% are operating in the domestic market, and they don't operate in the international markets, while 3.8% operates only in international markets. 11% round about 11% operates in both markets. Very surprising finding is that जब हमने इनका इन्वेस्टमेंट बिहेवियर देखा तो बिजनेस कंग्लोमरेट्स जो हैं वो मोस्टली प्रेफर करते हैं ट्रेडिशनल सेक्टर्स में इन्वेस्ट करना, जिसमें रिटेल रियल एस्टेट सेक्टर है, आपके पास टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर है, एंड आपके पास पावर एंड एनर्जी सेक्टर है। एंड सरप्राइजिंगली ये वही सेक्टर्स हैं जहाँ पे कोई ना कोई गवर्नमेंट की इंसेंटिव स्कीम जो है वो एग्जिस्ट कर रही है। जब इसके अगेंस्ट वो सेक्टर्स जहाँ पे वैल्यू एडिशन ज़्यादा है, जैसे आपके पास आईटी सेक्टर है, उस तरफ जो बिजनेस कंग्लोमरेट्स हैं वो इन्वेस्ट नहीं कर रहे हैं। वो ट्रेडिशनल सेक्टर्स में जहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट की कोई ना कोई इंसेंटिव स्ट्रक्चर एग्जिस्ट करता है वहाँ पे इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं। And we also looked at the export performance of these business conglomerates. इसमें जो है वो टेक्सटाइल है जो टॉप पे आ रहा है। And next is mobile phone manufacturing. I like to hand over to Umar.
वो सेक्टर्स जहाँ पे वैल्यू एडिशन ज़्यादा है, जैसे आपके पास
Special focus was on Pakistan mobile phone.
जैसे आपके पास आईटी सेक्टर है, उस तरफ जो बिजनेस कंग्लोमरेट्स हैं वो इन्वेस्ट नहीं कर रहे हैं। वो ट्रेडिशनल सेक्टर्स में जहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट की कोई ना कोई इंसेंटिव स्ट्रक्चर एग्जिस्ट करता है वहाँ पे इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं। And we also looked at the export performance of these business conglomerates. इसमें जो है वो टेक्सटाइल है जो टॉप पे आ रहा है।
on manufacturing there as well.
And next is mobile.
Quite a few big conglomerates have ventured into for obvious reasons, because there were incentives to be had and benefits to be
Special
had.
focus was on the Pakistan mobile phone
First of all,
manufacturing policy that was
Pakistan's mobile market is increasing, and production is also increasing, as is evident from these two figures. And smartphones, manufacturing of smartphones, which are 3G, 4G phones, these have also increased, and the feature phones, which are feature phones, production of feature phones has decreased, although still a sizable amount, because the lower income strata still buy feature phones.
incentives to be had
So,
and benefits to be
mobile phone manufacturing policy, which was introduced with much fanfare and was lauded by everyone, that
mobile market is
we saw
increasing,
many of
or
Pakistan's
production is
because
also
Pakistan
increasing,
spends
as
heavily on
evident from this
the import of
these
mobile
figures.
phones.
And
So, in
smartphone, manufacturing of smartphones,
policy,
which are
it
3G,
was
4G phones.
stipulated that 49% of the localization target would be met by June 2023, including 10% localization of motherboards and batteries. Achievement, none of that has been achieved. Only a few casings are produced in Pakistan. It was envisaged that Pakistan will export to non-traditional markets like Central Asian republics and Africa and UAE. And lo and behold, Pakistan exported 16,000 mobile phones to UAE in 2019 and 20. according to the PTA, and net exports after the policy have risen to negative $440 million. So it was said that after the introduction of policy, Pakistan will create a further 0.2 to 0.5 million jobs. So far, only 20,000 jobs have been created, and it was said that foreign investment of more than $2 million would come into Pakistan, but only 23.38 million have come, and of that, more than 8 million are by the company who is producing Samsung phones. So that clearly shows that import substitution in Pakistan does not work. We have many sectors to learn from. Automobile sector is an obvious choice. Like Usman said, that despite various incentives for more than 20-30 years, Pakistanis are paying 45% higher prices than international markets. Of course, they are due to various reasons like depreciation of dollars, but still they are overcharging their customers. So look at the import bill before and after the policy. Till 2019, it was 71.44 US dollar. CKDs, knockdown units and semi-knockdown units are still imported, and which has inflated the import bill on the account of mobile phones. We also looked at the state of real estate and construction in Pakistan, and as we can see that real estate in Pakistan is dominated by plots in twin cities. Yes. So this is specifically for twin cities because so far the surveys have only been carried out in Islam and Rawalpindi. And in both these cities, 50% of the real estate is in shape of plots. Again, we looked at the zoning regulations. As we see that for commercial and parking, zone 2 and 5 and zone 4, 5 to 8% of the land is allocated to commercial areas, and there is no provision for high-rise buildings, and this must be looked into. If some of you are unfortunate enough to live along that PWD road, you will see that whole road is not now commercialized. It shows that there is a massive demand for commercial real estate in Islamabad, at least. But our regulators, our urban planners do not pay heed to the requirements, and they just keep on promoting the rules that hurt domestic commerce and commercial activity in Pakistan.
Again, we looked at these
in twin cities again, as this is specifically for twin cities, but for us was for the whole of Pakistan. As we can see that prices have been increasing steadily, but returns have been decreasing. That is a very interesting phenomenon, because if you go to market to sell any real estate, there are no buyers, but when you go to buy it, there's very high price to pay. And one of the major things that shows, which ties in nicely with the Pide's thesis, and specifically Dr. Haq has written so much about it, that for God's sake, let large and high-rise building construction happens, but in Islamabad and Rawalpindi, only 1 to 4% of constructors are allowed or capable to handle projects worth more than 4 billion, which is very small. And if you look at the pyramid, the bottom is populated by small size constructors. And if we look at the number of tower cranes, which are synonymous with big construction, mega construction projects that high-rise buildings in Islamabad, there are only 19 to 20, Islamabad and Rawalpindi 19 to 21 tower cranes, and if we look at Dubai, they are more than 1,300 and other cities as well. India has also a lot number of tower cranes, but those figures, we did not quote those figures because India also manufactures tower cranes, so it exports as well, so we do not know the exact figures that are available for India. So this is the gist of the report. Thank you very much for your patience. I hope it was informative, and if you have any questions, now small size open for discussion. Thank you. And if we look at the number of good work, a stricter definition of commerce would have done wonders, because we would have focused on things that affect commerce rather than going into industrial policy and various other things which do not directly relate to commerce. That is the broad problem. Second comment is basically I think you missed a lot of stuff which is very critical in understanding why
our domestic commerce doesn't flourish. At the drop of a hat, we shut down our shops at 8 p.m. Because we don't have electricity or we don't have money to pay for the import of fuel. I mean, you mentioned about these mobile phones. Yet I have a friend who runs a mobile factory. He could not open LCs for 1.5 years for essential equipment that he needed. Where's the mention for that? I mean, you have a policy, but it just is not implemented because there is no correlation in the country about how things are to be managed together to develop domestic commerce. Then again, FBR had this policy that they would charge a lower tax rate to those who are registered and who have a point of sale. Last year that was withdrawn. Now they're paying the same rate of sales tax as anybody else, so there is no incentive for people to go for point of sale transactions or point of sale. The difference between the seller who sells without proper registration is amazing. I mean, it's not only the 18% sales tax that the person who is compliant pays, it's also that we've been long saying that everybody should be taxed according to the income that he is supposed to make. Yet each year FBR makes that claim, and then FBR goes and signs agreements with these guys saying that a fixed tax of so much will be applied. That is the reason why you don't have growth in domestic commerce. Then again, I don't think you've had serious discussions with the CAP, which is the exchange store guys. You really need to have those. You also need to have discussions with us. I don't think you had any discussion with us on any aspect of this report. I think the report could have been far better had it had the benefit of people who are in this business having contributed to it. I think I'll leave it at that. Then I'll ask Absar to make a few comments. Absar is an expert in commerce. So please.
I think a few comments when you talk about the problem of domestic commerce in Pakistan, it's sort of a chicken and egg situation where we have a very small domestic market.
जब डोमेस्टिक मार्केट में हमारी परचेजिंग पावर नहीं है और डिमांड नहीं है उसमें स्पेशली ओवर द पास्ट 1 to 2 years डिमांड हैज बीन eroded by energy prices and inflation, especially जो lower income groups their expenditures are dominated by energy now. So one, we don't अगर हमारे पास डिमांड नहीं होगी तो डोमेस्टिक कॉमर्स कैसे इंडिपेंडेंट अदर साइड ऑफ इट is on wheat, chicken and eggs. So that is where I think exports are very important because exports they help create very meaningful employment opportunities. जब आपका export sector development, I'm open to comments on this. This is just my opinion. When you develop your export sector, that gives an income boost, and that also creates demand for domestic products. You see chain store, I just want to point out there are chain store companies that are listed, especially in the textile sector. Apple Sapphire, जैसे board it was in the presentation. Those companies are listed and they own the Nishad. There's a lot of companies that have chain stores and are listed in the stock market.
So just one more thing, how protectionism destroys the domestic and the international market. We have a 7% duty on PSF imports, which is the raw material which is used in the manufacture of MMM fabrics, which are the fabrics of the future. Because 10 years ago, 70% of the demand was on cotton. Today,
30% of the demand is on cotton and 70% on नहीं सर मैं एक स्पेसिफिक चीज़ के ऊपर आप वो ये है कि by having roughly 20% protection for your local PSF manufacturers who are inefficient, whose plants for 40 years old is an exothermic. You've failed to develop the domestic market or the export market for that, which is the market sector that's growing in the world.
Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful report. My name is Mosambati and I like Diversification Sophistication.
सर कॉमर्स में हम स्टूडेंट्स को ये पढ़ाते हैं बेसिकली पाकिस्तानी कॉन्टैक्ट्स के पाकिस्तानी मोस्ट ऑफ द कॉमर्स जो है वो स्मॉल सिटीज़ में हो रही है। हमारे ट्रेडिशनली जैसे राजा बाज़ार है, रावलपिंडी में या शादी मार्केट है लाहौर में, इस तरह के एरियाज़ हैं, स्पोर्ट में कुछ ना कुछ उनके अंदर शामिल होना चाहिए था। लेकिन एक फिनोमेना जो है सर 1947 से पहले ब्रिटिश एरा में बहुत से कॉमर्स जो मार्केट डोमिनेटेड टाउन्स इस्टेब्लिश किए गए थे क्रॉस पंजाब सिंध के। वो चीज़ अब नहीं है। हम बहुत से स्टूडेंट्स को जब फील्ड सर्वे का कहते हैं तो सबसे बड़ा इशू ये है कि अब न्यू मार्केट्स क्रिएट नहीं हो रही, नया राजा बाज़ार क्रिएट नहीं हो रहा, इस तरह की टाउन्स क्रिएट नहीं हो रहे जहाँ पे और इस तरह की मार्केट्स बनाई जाए। उस हवाले से सर
जी मेरा नाम फरहान गिलानी है। मैं रियल एस्टेट सेक्टर से इमारत डेवलपर से 30 ईयर है वो चाइना के अंदर मैंने इंपोर्ट एक्सपोर्ट को देखा है, टेक्सटाइल को बहुत करीब से देखा है। अभी सारी हमने ओवरऑल जो डेटा और रिसर्च देखी है उसमें हमें ये नजर आया है कि 22 फैमिलीज बिजनेसेस हैं। हमारा इतना बड़ा ये सेटअप अभी प्लानिंग के लिए है, मुझे अभी तक ये समझ नहीं आई कि इसके अंदर कोई एक एंटरप्रेन्योर बैठा हुआ है। अगर हम मोबाइल की मार्केट की बात कर रहे हैं उसमें सबसे बड़ा इशू है 2018 के अंदर मैं काफ़ी चाइनीज़ कंपनी को लेके आया था, लेकिन उनकी रिसर्च ये थी कि हमारी जो लेबर है वो इतनी बेहतरीन नहीं है या ब्रेड ट्रेंड नहीं है कि वो अपने इन्वेस्टमेंट्स को यहाँ पे जो है वो लेके आए और प्रोडक्शन उस तरह उनके पास ना मिले। मैं पाइड से प्लानिंग कमीशन से सबसे एक रिक्वेस्ट करता हूँ कि हमारे पास कुछ प्लान है, हमें कुछ टाइम दिया जाए एज अ प्राइवेट सेक्टर, रियल एस्टेट सेक्टर और एक्सपोर्ट के लिए। जैसे सारा भी हमें बता रहे थे कार्टन के हवाले से, मेरे ख्याल में 15 से 25 सिंगल कार्टन जो है वो पाकिस्तान में पैदा होता है अल्लाह की तरफ से, कुदरत की तरफ से। और सेम एज इन इंडिया, लेकिन इंडिया ने उसको जो है वो बैन किया हुआ है एक्सपोर्ट पे, और वो लोकल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में इस्तेमाल करते हैं। सो फार पाकिस्तान से ये सारा कॉटन जो है वो चाइना की तरफ एक्सपोर्ट हो जाता है। बहुत कम उसमें जो है वो पूरा जो है वो कपड़ा बनाया जाता है या धागा बनाया जाता है। उसकी वजह ये है कि हमारे पास लेट्स सपोज हम बात कर रहे हैं कि हमारे पास जो है लोकल इंडस्ट्री के अंदर जो है वो एक्सपोर्ट करने की क्वालिटी इस तरह की नहीं है। ना हमें आज तक जो है वो पैकेजेस के ऊपर R&D करवाई गई है, ना हमें आज तक जो है एक्सपोर्ट मार्केट्स जो है उनको कैसे जो है हमने जो है वो डिस्कवर करना है। या हम छोटा सा अगर चाइना को हम अपने सामने देखें कि हाउ दे कंकर द होल वर्ल्ड, दैट इज़ वेरी सिंपल। कि आप सिर्फ कैंटन फेयर को देख लें कि 136 कैंटन फेयर विच इज़ ट्वाइस इन ईयर गुआंगझो के अंदर होते हैं, और वो वहाँ से 100 बिलियन प्लस एक्सपोर्ट ऑर्डर्स जो है वो वहाँ से लेते हैं। हमारा छोटा उनके जितने भी कंट्रीज हैं या सूबा उन्होंने छोटा सा देखा कि एक कैंटन फेयर के अंदर ईयरली 2 ऑर्डर्स हम लेते हैं। व्हाई नॉट वी शुड हैव अ परमानेंट मार्केट्स जहाँ पे पूरी दुनिया से जो है वो लोगों को लाया जाए और उनको जो है एक्सपोर्ट ऑर्डर्स को डेवलप किया जाए। ईयू सिटी आती है, ईयू सिटी में मार्केट्स बनाई जाती हैं, किलोमीटर्स मार्केट्स बनाई जाती हैं जहाँ पे थोड़ा सा उन लोगों को जो है रिपेट जो है वो किया जाता है। मतलब मैं अगर थोड़ा सा इस चीज़ को देखूं कि टेक्सटाइल अभी हमारा नज़र आया कि वो 10% है, वी वर द नंबर 1 इन द वर्ल्ड फ्यू इयर्स अगो, और अब हमें जो है वो स्टिचिंग में बांग्लादेश काट गए और उसमें चाइना हमारे पास चला गया है। कोविड आया, हमारे लिए बड़ा एक ज़बरदस्त हुआ, इंडिया बंद हो गया। मैं थोड़ा अपना टाइम ले रहा हूँ, थोड़ी सी मेरी जज्बात है, मैं चाहता हूँ कि आप लोगों के साथ एक्सप्रेस करूँ। कोविड आया, हमारे पास ऑर्डर आ गए हैं, हमारी जो डेड लूम्स भी थी वो भी हमारी स्टार्ट हो गई है। अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह हमने बड़ा अच्छा हमने अचीवमेंट्स की, लेकिन हमारे वो जो ऑर्डर्स आए, क्या उन ऑर्डर्स को हम रिटेन करने के लिए कुछ पॉलिसीज़ थी? कुछ हुकूमत ने हमें ऐसा कुछ सपोर्ट किया कि हम उनके साथ जो है अपने रिलेशन को जो है बिल्डअप कर सके, उसको जो है कंटिन्यू किया जा सके? आंसर इज नो। फिर वो ऑर्डर दोबारा वापस चाइना चले जाते हैं और दोबारा वो शुरू हो जाता है सब कुछ मसला। तो मेरे ख्याल में जो है मैं ज़्यादा उस तरह आप लोग की तरह पढ़ा लिखा तो नहीं हूँ, लेकिन प्रैक्टिकली आई हैव सीन इन चाइना फॉर लास्ट 15 ईयर। मैंने अपने आंखों के सामने जो है उन सिटीज़ को, उस इंडस्ट्रीज़ को डेवलप होते देखा है। दुबई के अंदर इतना अर्सा मैं रियल एस्टेट में रहा हूँ, इसलिए अभी जो है 1 ऑफ द 5th लार्जेस्ट कंपनी ओनर डेवलपर के साथ पाकिस्तान वापस काम करने के लिए आया हूँ। हम अभी प्लाट की मशरूम ग्रोथ देख रहे हैं, वर्टिकल्स अभी हम बता रहे हैं कि 19 किलोमीटर है हमारे पास। तो किराने हमारे पास कहाँ से आएगी जब हमें ग्राउंड प्लस 6 से ऊपर की अप्रूवल नहीं मिलती? चलो शुक्र है 4 तो मेरे पास है, मैं तो आई वाज सरप्राइज कि यहाँ पे 19 किराने हैं टोटल हमारे पास। तो मेरे ख्याल में कुछ ऐसी पॉलिसीज़ कीजिए कि वर्टिकल के अंदर वैसे भी लोग यहाँ पे जो है वो इन्वेस्ट नहीं करना चाहते। समटाइम गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसीज़ ऐसी होती हैं, लास्ट टाइम जो है 99% लोग जो है वो अचानक ही डेवलपर्स और बिल्डर्स बन गए और लोगों को बिलियंस जो है उन लोगों ने अपने पास कलेक्ट किया है एंड नाउ नो वन इज़ हियर। तो मैं आप सब लोगों से एक रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि मेरे पास से थोड़ा सा ये टाइम कम है, तो वी हैव वर्क फॉर 1 ईयर रिसर्च बेस्ड कुछ चीज़ें हमने की है, कुछ इंटरप्रेन्योर्स को लिए, कुछ एक्सपोर्ट्स को लिए, कुछ मार्केट्स के लिए।
आप लोग भी कुछ करके दिखाएं, आप पब्लिक सेक्टर में क्या करते हैं? सर मैं प्राइवेट सेक्टर क्या करते हैं? सर मैं आपको मैं आज इस वक्त आपको चैलेंज करके मैं लोगों से मिल गया हूँ जो कि यहाँ पे बहुत बड़ी इन्वेस्टमेंट करते हैं, बहुत बड़ी उनके पास लैंड है। आप
सर मैं आपको एक गुजारिश करूँ, मैं आज इस वक्त आपको चैलेंज करता हूँ, मैं अपने लोगों से मिल गया हूँ जो कि यहाँ पे बहुत बड़ी बड़ी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स रखते हैं, बहुत बड़ी बड़ी उनके पास लैंड है। आप हमें सिर्फ लोगो दे दें पाकिस्तान का, हमें आपसे 1 रुपया नहीं चाहिए। मैं अपने एक्सपोर्ट भाइयों से भी वादा करता हूँ, जो प्लान मैं बनाना चाह रहा हूँ, जो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के लिए आना चाह रहा हूँ। जैसे आप देखें कि हमारी ये 20 इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट है, टैंक्स कर्जा ही इन्हीं को देता है, नई इंडस्ट्री ही इन्हीं को बनाने देता है और ये बनाना चाहिए, इसमें कोई शक नहीं कि उनका एक्सपीरियंस है, उनका सब कुछ है। लेकिन व्हाट नेक्स्ट, नया बंदा कौन आएगा और कैसे आएगा? हमारे पास पूरा प्लान है, आप हमें जो है बिल्कुल सर फायदा नहीं है।
Thank you.
Yes, देखिए ये प्लान शेयरिंग से बात सिमरियल मैं कोई नहीं अगर सामने नहीं आया हमने सामने रखा आपके सामने लेके
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, जी.
You have done great work, definitely very well. और आपने डिटेल में जाके डेप्थ में जाके सब चीज़ों को देखा है. अगर आप हमें पाकिस्तान की बात भी आई और पॉलिसी की बात भी आई, इम्प्लीमेंटेशन भी आर डिसीजन व्हाटएवर. अगर आप उसको 3 मेजर पॉइंट्स में बता सकें, ये 3 काम कर लें तो आपके ये मसाइल हल हो जाएंगे.
टेबल इधर है पिछला
let me ask our secretary to develop this and then we will get the chair of this.
जी.
Thank you everyone. This is a beneficial effort on the part of PIDE to put together the major issues in different segments of domestic and international commerce. I know Dr. Nadeemul Haq arrived in Pakistan with a very agenda of driving domestic commerce, I think back in 2005 perhaps. At the time, I think Commerce Division was very excited to learn about these new ideas of domestic commerce and created a domestic commerce wing. But somehow, from the national agenda, domestic commerce fizzled out, perhaps because of the fact that in 2010 the 18th Amendment brought about some very substantive changes, and a lot of the sectors that have been displayed here now they are squarely in the provincial domain. For example, if you look at the acts at page 103, which are rules and regulations applicable to the organized retail sector, I can't even find one law which pertains to which is in the federal government's domain. That was perhaps one reason why some of the things and the recommendations on domestic commerce could not move and find traction with the federal government. But of course, there's a lot of food for thought here. To find what the federal government needs to do, there are standards which are required to be set, and perhaps a national leadership role is required in the areas of the economy which have so much contribution to the GDP in terms of size. I was just wondering how to put the domestic commerce agenda up there in the national agenda. We are now looking forward to the next elections, and I was wondering that when we talk about trade, we talk about traders at the federal level only when we are discussing taxation. They come forward as a major stakeholder when we're talking about implementation of sales tax and income tax. Otherwise, I've seen, if you've had a look at the discussions at the federal level, trade and commerce, domestic commerce in particular, is not discussed to the extent that perhaps it needs to be discussed. And if you look at the job creation figures, I think it's one of the major employers in the labor market, and therefore I think that if job creation is there as one of the highest priorities of any political party in the coming elections, perhaps domestic commerce can jump to a higher priority even at the federal level. In terms of land, I think a lot of work has been done by PIDE. In this report, there is also some mention of land and how it affects domestic commerce. I recall that I was posted abroad in Holland and I was given the task of bringing investors to Pakistan. I brought one investor who was in the western part of Netherlands and was looking to relocate his industry to a low-cost environment. They were able to find a partner in Karachi. So the next step for them was to look at, how to put up a factory here in Pakistan. They started from Karachi, moved to Islamabad, then went right up to Peshawar, Lahore and other areas. And they did a survey of the price of land and at what cost, they would be able to acquire a plot for their industrial investment. At the end of 2 months, they came back to me and they said that, we are finding it very difficult that, to place our investment, bring our investment here, because we have compared the price of land in Pakistan with that of Czechoslovakia, and we've Czech Republic now, and they said that we can find industrial land cheaper there compared to in Pakistan. So we've decided to move our production there, also because of the low cost of transportation. So that is perhaps, I think, one area which has been pointed out by PIDE. It's a very important area. If we are to attract investment from abroad, if we are to encourage investment by companies which are prepared to export, we need to give them scale. We need to first, the first factor of production is land, and we are failing there in terms of providing them with solutions that are cost effective, solutions which do not make their investment at a very high cost. Perhaps some new avenues such as leasing and leasing markets need to come in here and provide some breathing space to people who want to expand into manufacturing and other areas of investment. In terms of tariff, a lot of there's been discussion on cascading tariffs and how cascading tariffs has hurt us. I think one of the main points is that we have a tariff policy board here now, which has moved the decision making to some extent to Ministry of Commerce, but at the end of the day it really boils down to our revenue considerations. And the fact that custom duties still, though it is not a major part of the pie now, but in terms of growth, if you look at the addition to total tax revenue in any year, you'll find out that a big contribution in the growth of the tax revenue is made by custom duties, and then you can add to it other taxes collected at the border. So by not broadening our tax base and strengthening our domestic infrastructure for tax collection, we are in fact burdening the imports. And whenever we consider lowering tariffs to increase efficiency, the revenue considerations kick in. So to some extent, the tariff policy board, even though while it is placed in the Ministry of Commerce, the FBR and its revenue considerations they are a heavy weight. In terms of the two items that were mentioned, the ON phenomenon in the auto sector and also the PSF issue, the man-made fiber area, I think it's very important that to realize that behind each investment decision, once you attract foreign investors, they are looking at some concessions. And once you lock in the concessions, they expect those concessions to continue. Sometimes we give them concessions which ensure that they would have a domestic market, and that domestic market would continue to be protected with a higher tariff on their finished product, and they would be allowed to import their intermediary and raw materials at lower costs. But I think the way to go forward in this is to set a limit to the duration for which such a cascading tariff is allowed, and to gradually reduce the protection granted to them. But again, I think it is very important to highlight at a national level and to understand that the most important hindrance here is the excessive dependence on taxes raised at the border. If we are able to reduce protection, we give them cascading tariff for some time, but then there is a timeline for removing that protection and exposing those industries to competition from abroad. I think that's how other countries have done it, and that's how Pakistan needs to do it. Unfortunately, in the last 20 years, we were reducing our tariffs. Our average, simple weighted average of tariffs had come down considerably, but it has not moved further down because of the very fact that there is of course a political economy of the auto sector as well as of the MMF sector, and it is hurting us a lot. And I think it's really now time to have a serious look at what needs to be done to improve competitiveness and to take these industries which have enjoyed protection for so long towards their export preparedness and give them targets for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Secretary. This is very informative, very powerful comments. And then we will take
Vice Chancellor, Secretary, distinguished participants, begin by commending PIDE and the Vice Chancellor and his team for putting together this State of Commerce report. There could be many discussions about the data interpretation and methodologies, but the very fact that these issues have been brought to the policy table is very commendable. Some of these issues, well known as they are, don't find often a policy space because of lack of focus on them. So well done. I think we all have the opportunity to participate in a number of such events, and these shortcomings or gaps or failings are highlighted, and a lot of prescription also takes place. So generally my sense is that people have come to a stage where they know what needs to be done. So I keep asking myself this question, that why is it not done? This country has sensible people, has professionals, we have economists, we have people who understand these matters, we have businesses, we have structures, we have institutions, all elements that need to be there. And yet we are caught up in a environment of low performance. I think the Vice Chancellor was continuously reminding me of the size of the industry, the size of the market, the number of companies that go abroad, and all of this for a country of the size of Pakistan is quite a dismal situation. And it is important to try and understand that why is it so? Other countries who might have less endowments and were behind us in economic development have moved forward, and the comparisons were also shown, and these points have been raised oft time in many sessions and meetings now. So the first question that I ask myself is that who makes economic plans in Pakistan? Where is the economic planning done, if at all it is an economic planning which generally harmonizes the landscape of various frameworks that need to move in tandem in the same direction. Whether it's urban policy, or it relates to land usage, or to development of markets, or to the regulation for manufacturing of mobile phones, etc. All of this must derive their sanctity from some parameters. And I find, and that's a critique on us and the Planning Commission, that I find those parameters missing, to which a reference can be made. So people can have all kind of policies here, interventions which are not in conformance with the national outlook on matters. For instance, some policies could be import substitution and in their character. While we are talking about export-led growth, in parallel we are also pursuing policies of import substitution. and these when work together, they tend to nullify each other. So there are policy contradictions, and institutions could be working at cross purposes. It is but natural that various ministries would have different performance outcomes and indicators, and they would have different performance matrices. For instance, it is quite normal that the FBI would tend to look at revenue maximization as their core function. It's also normal that the Ministry for Commerce would want to have a lower trade deficit, more exports, lower imports. That's how it works. The Ministry for Industries would want to have lower taxation so that the industrial growth can be supported. But where does this policy discussion coincide and is reconciled? So I think my first submission to this forum is, and of course this is something we are also working and looking at continuously, is to look at the institutions of economic decision making. And those institutions, in our case, are functioning, but they do not have the optimal functioning and the backup support that is required through evidence and good policy input. The prime institution that we have is the Economic Coordination Committee of the Cabinet. As the way name indicates, it provides economic coordination which reconciles some of these diverse interventions. For a cabinet committee to be able to reconcile these, because it's a very high level forum, it's a policy forum, it's not meant to look at operations. But the ECC doesn't have a secretariat. It does not have a ministry or an entity which works for the ECC. Having seen it function for a long time, I can say that the immediate operational needs are addressed rather than the medium to long-term policy framework. So that brings me to the second point on short-termism. It was mentioned that the revenue requirements take precedence over other matters which might be have a more durable outcomes. It was also mentioned that in the short run there could be a dip in export earnings if you were to recast our tariff structures, or there could be a surge in imports because if you were to lower down tariffs on certain products, and most of our exports are also dependent on import of raw material and intermediary goods. So those immediate considerations where reserves become the driver of policy creates a great deal of distortion, and the different institutions which are working to make sure that we stay afloat, we have the reserves that are required to service the imports and meet our obligations, are more concerned with keeping revenues today than looking at revenues, say 2 to 3 years later on, or export earnings which will come. I can mention a case in point where we've struggled in the past 1 year to liberalize the forex regime for the IT sector, and they have now been allowed to retain 50% of the export earnings abroad so that they can provide after services to their clients. This was not possible under the previous state bank regulations, which were largely designed for the manufacturing sector. Exports of goods, exports of services was not anticipated in those foreign exchange regulations per se. And it's not possible to treat the services sector in the same manner as you treat the manufacturing sector or goods which are exported. So even for that limited amount of foreign exchange reserves that could have been potentially affected, not brought back to Pakistan. There was a great deal of resistance. And then the main argument was that we don't have the space to forego any more foreign exchange for the countries. So I think that the second point about short-termism and the need for today as compared to institutions which are looking at more 3 to 5 years time scale. The electoral time scale also is not very supportive in terms of governments taking a more medium-term view. And I think it is here that the quality of input from the civil service becomes a great deal of importance, because the civil service is supposed to have a more medium to long-term framework, while politics will always have a electoral cycle framework. And the point where the two meet is a fair point to move forward. My third point is about the role of the government. I think this could have been the first point also. I think in a lot of discussions that have been brought up, and PIDE has done some significant work on this, the role of government in Pakistan needs to be very sharply defined and circumscribed. We saw that some of the companies which are listed in the stock exchange, government companies, and they are heavily present in the business domain. There was a separate study done on the request of the Planning Commission about the footprint of the public sector. So despite all the talk about privatization, we're still in the business of insurance, we're still in the business of logistics, we're still in the business of consultancies. We've not outsourced as much of the government function as could have been done to create private space and to generate private investment and capital, and to offset the need to have high tax rates. Even if our base is small, the rates are high. That has to do something with the quality of expenditure, public expenditure, that is also going on. I think there's a lot of emphasis on collecting more revenues, but less emphasis on the quality of public expenditure. And how does it support the growth requirements of the country? There was mention of inadequate skill sets among the workforce, and that is where public expenditure has to go to create good, capable, competent, skilled human workforce. Also provide public infrastructure which is durable, reliable, and affordable. In case of energy needs, I think this is mentioned quite often. So where is public expenditure taking place, and how can we improve the quality of public expenditure? And liberate more space for private investment and capital. On that, I think the point, and this could be the next point, on how to make the federation work. It was mentioned that commerce is a crucial subject in many respects, while external trade is a federal subject. And the Ministry of Commerce, I think there's a great deal of emphasis on export earnings and developing foreign trade, and as it should be. That is their prime function. But this whole area of domestic commerce gets neglected because of this constitutional diktat that this is a crucial subject. Even for crucial subjects, there could be national frameworks. And nothing stops us from doing that. The Constitution provides a way forward for that. There are two other constitutional scheme and institutions which provide us a path to make the federation work. And it's not only about the federation. Internationally, we see that regions and unions and even international level regulations are harmonized. The European Union is one example, but there are so many examples where cross-border regulations are harmonized for ease of transactions, for making things easier. So to consider that this could be left to the provinces and the local governments and they will do it on their own without national frameworks, I think is misplaced. And the scheme of the Constitution provides for the Council of Common Interest, which has the domain to work on Federal Legislative List Part B or Part 2, where entry 13 talks about interprovincial coordination. National standard settings is again a federal function which is residing in the Ministry for Science and Technology and sometimes can be rather on the fringes because of the nature of work that goes on there, but also because the ministry which is housing this very important function both on quality control, standardizations, and also on compliances is not a mainstream ministry in the government. It's seen as a ministry which should be promoting science and technology rather than looking at standards and compliances of products. So that needs to be also reconsidered on how to mainstream that work, which is extremely important from a perspective of raising standards. I completely endorse the point of view that it is the domestic market which actually uplifts the entire development framework and creates the surplus which becomes exportable and can then lead to export earnings. The standards for exports and the standards for the domestic market are at wide variance with each other. For the products which are made for our local consumers are of very low quality, and the market does not respond to quality products because the specifications are also very substandard. You can see this in appliances, the appliances that we use in electricity, in gas, in building materials, etc. These all cause a lot of damage to the economy because of the higher cost of energy that is required to cool or heat these premises, or use the appliances which are very inefficient in the way they generate energy. And this has gone down actually. The quality of these appliances has been steadily going down. And that is why they are not export quality, because they are not even of fair quality for the country itself. So the point I would wish to make is that we would, and we're working on some of this work regarding national frameworks, and there should be a national framework for domestic commerce. And of course, the provinces are free to then adapt it and conform it to their needs. What works well in Balochistan might not work well in Punjab, for instance. Or even within Balochistan, what works for Quetta might not work for Kuzdar. So there has to be a great deal of localization in terms of what is better for various regions of the country. But national frameworks give a direction to the work that has to be done locally. Similarly, national frameworks for buildings, for example. The Capital Development Authority may have a different outlook from Lahore Development Authority or Peshawar Development Authority, or for that matter, Karachi Development Authority. And other than these development authorities, we have municipalities where we have local government regulations and functions, and they can be at wide variance, but not only between the provinces, but between various cities. So again, the need for national frameworks, how to optimize this. If we're saying the engagement in these matters would greatly help us bring a certain degree of harmonization. And I would say uniformity, but predictability in the way various provinces do legislation, and they build up the institutions which are required for legislative. For the involvement of the provinces, we have tried very hard that the National Economic Council becomes more functional. It must be the prime national decision-making entity because it has the participation of the provinces and they are equal partners in that very important national forum, which has a constitutional mandate to look at national economic conditions and make policies and give directions for national level economic policy. We also feel that the Executive Committee of the National Economic Council should no longer only be a project approval body, but should also look at the economic policy and the commercial economic and industrial situation of the country, so that there is a national level oversight over what is happening. The ECC cannot perform this function because it is limited to the federal cabinet and the provinces are not represented. Finally, we are also grappling with the whole notion of who runs the economy. I'm not suggesting that somebody should be active in the economies are best left alone to be run with good regulations and sound policies. But who in the government of Pakistan is responsible for economic management? I think this is largely, if we ask today ourselves, the answer would be the Ministry of Finance. They are engaged with the international partners, the International Monetary Fund, and other key stakeholders to take major economic decisions. Most countries have treasuries which have economic functions as well as financial functions. And there's no harm in that if we have a unified command which is looking at the economy as well as financial stabilization of the country, likely the execution of the budget. In case of Pakistan, this has always been a dichotomy. The function of the economy resides with the Planning Commission of the Ministry of Planning and Development, while the budget stabilization and budget execution functions of the Ministry of Finance. Over a period of time, the budget stabilization function has taken on because of historical deficits and the policies which have been in place for a while. And budget stabilization has taken precedence over economic policy planning and programming. Because the Ministry of Finance does not have the inherent capacity to look at economic policies and sectoral policies and then to devise budgetary interventions which can support those policies. So the premise there is that if the budget deficits are lower, the inflation rate is lower, and more revenues are available to provide public services, the economy will grow on its own. I leave it to the researchers and others whether or not this is a good premise and if it work. We have to have an active intervention in the economy, not in the sphere of supporting particular sectors, but to provide an enabling environment and a framework which helps investment, business and commercial activity, then we need to have a ministry. Whether or not it is in the Planning Commission or in the Finance Ministry, it's a separate topic, but somebody has to steer the economic agenda and bring about a broad congruity in the policies which were mentioned. And we see a lot of distortion, whether it is in the stock market or in the financial markets or in the banking sector or in the urban management sector or in the agriculture. The markets are not functioning well. So in conclusion, I would submit that the role of the state and the role of the government is the beginning point from where we would chart a very narrow agenda for the government. And that narrow agenda should be compatible with the limited revenues that we generate, at least in the short run. And the core provision of core public goods should only be the function of the government while leaving the regulation largely to the provinces the federal government should take leadership on providing national frameworks which are enabling, which provide space for the private sector and makes government less intrusive, and regulatory environment is kept to the bare minimum, and that through third parties and compliances which are done by secretaries. I can just mention one example. When the rice export compliance was given to the association, it worked much better than the ones that the government has. Because the exporters were themselves monitoring the quality of rice that they were exporting. So less government, less inclusion, less public sector, more robust institutions of regulation, very fair, publicly accountable, and oversight functions from the government, sound policies. I think that is how we see the way forward. So I'd like to thank Vice Chancellor once again for providing me also this opportunity to address this very distinguished gathering. I think for moving forward, at least this agenda that you pointed out, we, the Planning Commission, will constitute a working group which should be chaired by the Secretary of Commerce with all the approaching Commerce departments, and look at some of the findings of this report and present to us, and then onwards to the other forums on what could be done to improve the state of commerce. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ji. Thank you very much. Very thoughtful comments, Ji. Very thoughtful comment. Thank you, Madam Sarah. I won't take long, Ji. I think we've got to get into the proceedings. We've got a discussion outside. Lots to talk about, lots to discuss. This is the whole point of something like this. I think the Deputy Chairman is absolutely correct. The role of the government is something that we've never debated in this country. I go back to my experience in the US, for example. In the US, Deputy Chairman, the Treasury is the Ministry of Budget. Office of Budget Management runs the budget. So there is no such thing as the Finance Ministry running the country. The Finance Ministry running the country, we've written about it a lot. There been development budget that the Finance Ministry has taken on too much. But your point about the role of government is very tempting. And the issue is that we've really never discussed the role of government. You say we know a lot of solutions. I humbly submit we don't, because we've never really had a good discussion. We must have a better discussion. National framework, through the role of national framework. For example, we've used the 18th Amendment as something to kind of dichotomize the country, or fragment the country. When I look at the US again, every week a government department puts out a report. Every week, every morning, in fact, there is a report from one of the government departments, and the market at 9 o'clock watching the report and reacts to the report. Sometimes the inflation report, sometimes the housing report, sometimes the water and labor report, sometimes the agriculture report, sometimes the storage report. These reports are extremely important, and that's what I think the government should be doing. These reports make the basis of a national framework. They make the basis of a national framework, and that's why we think this report, State of Commerce, should be put out by the Ministry of Commerce every year, and later on they can put shorter reports out every month. The market in this country operates without any knowledge at all, because quite frankly, every day the market is speculating. We talk about speculation, but speculation is speculating on information, and we have no information in this country. The second point that I make is that we really do not have a consensus in this country. We really do not even debate issues. Our parliament doesn't work. Our parliament doesn't act as a debating forum where we learn. And the government does not really report to the people, so we kind of are roaming around in an information vacuum, which is creating instability that everybody decries. But this relates also to my main point. We still operate in a working domestic framework. Even today, the discussion that we've had talks about import substitution and export promotion. Two themes that should now be out of our lingo. There's no such thing as export promotion and import substitution. Those are legacies of a mercantilistic era, which we have to get out of. We have to have a holistic economic policy, which is based on the global value chain. We can't segment ourselves from the global value chain. You can't have the Deputy Chairman said, I have a low quality t-shirt here and best quality out there. It doesn't work. Then Nike, as I said once, we had a debate on this, And one of the big people said, hey, we don't do any research. Research is done by Nike and those people. Well, then you lost your brand. Unless you do your own research, you can't make a brand. Forget it. It doesn't happen. All Nike is a design, nothing else. Nike is just a design, Apple is just a design. So we have to figure out if you don't do research. That's a very important thing. Secondly, sir, where does the evidence come from? If you don't have our own evidence, then the evidence is going to be provided by the lender. And the lender's evidence he provides, as we've seen in Dodd-Frank, as we've seen in the global crisis, when the broker provides you advice, it's loaded with price. So the lender is providing you advice, it's loaded with price. And we fall for that loaded advice all the time. And we have this debate all the time. Why do the lenders provide us evidence? But because we have made our university capable of providing evidence like this. If you got a university to do this, they'd be much better off. They'd be learning something, they'd be doing something. Finally, on policy making, let me just say, we are currently doing a study on India's reform as a whole. One day we have to speak on Zoom. And we studied what they've done. The point is, Monte Carlo earlier, the study, we talk about it later. Monte Carlo earlier wrote the famous M document, which was how to get out of the clutches of climate. And the point was to drop the marketplace policy in a nutshell. And the point was to get out of this trap that tariffs like resource security. We need to debate this and talk about it, just to accept the tariffs and resource security. And here I made my alma mater, IMF. I had a debate with Justice one day, and I told her, IMF is not doing justice by us. IMF is now supporting an exchange rate that is not a market-based exchange rate, contrary to its articles of agreement. IMF is supporting tariff increases, contrary to its articles of agreement. So quite frankly, but then later, you don't have a consensus form. You don't discuss these things. So we have to rely on short-term measures in that way, because you guys don't have a long-term policy. So we have to balance the books because the global creditors are on our necks. We have to balance the books. The only way to balance books is raise revenues, crunch the exchange rate, crunch the market. But sir, we pay a huge price. Growth rate is negative, investment is almost negative. And we are paying a huge price. Partly we can blame the World Bank, but majorly we have to blame ourselves because we neither have capacity to make policy nor to discuss and debate. And this is a big issue. And finally, right, when I used to be DCC on the cabinet, I used to always say, when are we going to have a conceptual discussion? The biggest problem is the government doesn't have a conceptual discussion. And the biggest problem is we have no room for conceptual discussion because of such a crisis mode. So our aim today was to try and put something on the table that we hope that other ministries, we'd like to do this in every ministry. We'd like to do a state education report. We'd like to do a report in every ministry. And I think the role of the government should be to provide information like this, coordinate the market and coordinate the provinces. The US government puts out a Department of Labor. Labor is not a federal government issue. Labor is a local government issue. But they put out a federal report on labor every week. So I think these are important things to discuss. Thank you very much, folks. Inshallah, we pursue this. Thank you very much.